All right, here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our next Unvalley session. I'm very excited to be here in the Excel in Your Career track, but this session is going to be impactful for everyone interested in being more brave and entrepreneurial and powerful. And we've got a lot to cover. I'm Jackie Dietrich with Established, a consultancy that works with innovation programs from NASA and the Air Force to banks and innovation hubs, and with our partner PowderKeg and Unvalley. We are also the power behind Startup of the Year. I'm a lifelong Heartlander and an entrepreneurship ecosystem builder, so I'm really excited to be in conversation with all of you in the audience. And throughout the next 30 minutes, we'd love to field your questions, comments, thoughts, anything about this session. So I'm going to introduce our guest, out of Nashville, who has an incredible story, both personal and professional. Marcus Whitney is founding partner of Jumpstart Health Investors, the most active venture capital firm in America focused on innovative healthcare companies with a portfolio of over 100 companies. He's been listed in the Upstart 100 by Upstart Business Journal, Power 100 by Nashville Business Journal, and has been featured in Inc., TechCrunch, Fast Company, and The Atlantic. He's also the author of the best-selling book, Create and Orchestrate, about claiming your creative power through entrepreneurship. He's the producer and host of Marcus Whitney Live, an interview show live streamed on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Twitch, and Marcus Whitney's Audio Universe, a podcast on all the major platforms. Hi, Marcus. Thanks for being here at Unvalley.
Hey, thank you for having me, Jackie.
So I want to just jump right in, because what we didn't mention is where you got your start, I think, and how much you can identify with this audience that's looking to break into tech. You were employee number 5 or 6 at Emma Email Marketing?
Yes.
And that's also a company based here in the Midwest.
Yep. Based in Nashville, yep.
Based in Nashville. Okay, so Emma was a young company when you joined. Would you say that that was your foray into entrepreneurship?
It was for sure. I moved to Nashville in the year 2000. I was born and raised in Brooklyn. I moved here to Nashville from Atlanta in the year 2000, and I was teaching myself how to code because I was just waiting tables. I was a college dropout. And I taught myself how to code back in 2000. It was a little easier to teach yourself how to code on one hand, a little bit harder on another hand. There was no like Code Academy or any of that kind of stuff. So you actually had to still like buy books from bookstores and read them and then do all the examples. But the languages were a little bit simpler and things were more straightforward. So I spent about 8 months teaching myself how to code. And then April of 2001, I got my first job at a company called HealthStream, and spent 2 years working at HealthStream and then one other firm. And then in 2003, I found Emma. So I found the founders, Clint and Will, who were getting that company off the ground. When I got there, they had a prototype and they had done a great job with branding and selling it to some pretty big companies like Thomas Nelson Publishers. But the prototype was kind of falling over. And so it was my first really big job to go in and rewrite a piece of software, which then we built the company on for many years. So I stayed there for 4 years until there were 50 employees and we were making millions of dollars, and I got some equity out of that. And so that was like my first true startup experience, and it started as just a software developer.
What convinced them to take a chance on you?
Yeah, that's a good question for them. I think at that time, Nashville was not flush with software development talent, quite frankly. And I think if people were into software development, it was pretty unlikely they were going to go work at a startup. Back then, it wasn't like there was this crazy fantasy world about startups, especially ones that weren't, well funded or anything like that. It's 2003, right? It was post.com bust. So, I think people were looking for stable jobs. As far as I remember, they were looking to, get certified in Microsoft or Cisco or something like that, and then go work for a company where they could get a really good salary. And so I think it was probably some of it was just they didn't have, that big of a pool of talent to pick from. And then I was just really passionate about what they were doing and willing to work really hard. They were also built on open source software. So this was, the era where Apache and PHP and things that MySQL were, just starting to really be able to be used in enterprise settings. And so they were building on open source technologies, and there weren't that many people around who knew those technologies either. So I think it was a combination of several different things that really made it, work out for us.
Well, and it's part of your story about what that really led to the book that you've written. So congratulations on this book, Create and Orchestrate. I downloaded it in Kindle. Good. It's a fast read in a good way. The story moves, and it's so interesting. Writing a book is really hard for most that attempt it. Why was it so important for you to write it?
Well, it was hard for me too, so you can put me in that bucket. It was super hard, but about 5 years ago, I just looked up at my life and looked back 15 years ago when I moved to town and was waiting tables, didn't have a degree. I wasn't ever down on myself, but it was a long way from that kid who moved to town to starting up a venture business, having been through, several technology companies, sold some companies and done pretty well. And I didn't want the story to get away from me. And also, I was at that point where our Entrepreneur Center had been up for about 5 years. And so I was part of that process and was doing more and more mentoring, and just sort of felt like I need to just get this into a book format, much easier way to sort of get it out to people. I thought it was going to be easier. I did not realize how much easier it would be to just talk to people than it would be to actually write a good book. It's really hard to write a good book.
All right. So tell us more for the audience that hasn't had a chance to read it. What's it really about? Give us your pitch. You didn't know you were coming to pitch our event about startups. Give us your pitch and tell us, who is the book really meant for?
So I wrote the book for myself, the version of myself that left Emma to start a journey in entrepreneurship. So I wrote it for myself, someone who didn't have any formal training and didn't really have mentorship or people in the family that were seasoned entrepreneurs. So you got it through osmosis and just had the passion to do it, but didn't know how much you didn't know. Right. And so the book it covers the last 20 years of my life here in Nashville. So it covers everything from moving here and waiting tables to now being a venture capitalist. And it also, it pulls out the lessons. I tell a lot of the stories of failures that I've experienced, not just the things that went well, but pull out the lessons from each one of those things. And then the spine of the book is 2 chapters called collectively the 8 core concepts, where I explain a fundamental framework for how all businesses work, that basically anybody can understand, but that I had never seen sort of put down anywhere before. So it's something that I learned from being a software developer. Software developers, they have to build applications all the time. They don't want to do this. Developers are really lazy. We don't like to write the same code twice. But if you think about applications, all applications have the same things. They all have authentication, they all have security, they all have data storage, they all have navigation. So, imagine if you're a software developer and every single time you have to write the login thing, every single time you have to write how you're going to connect to the database. So how they solve for it is they create frameworks, and those frameworks allow you to get up and running quickly. Well, the business world really could use to have some frameworks. And the reality is that every single business does have a core set of concepts that they are all run by, and there's a set of rules with those concepts. And so I just use my own experiences to craft my own framework for it. So that's the spine of the book.
Can you give us a teaser of the framework?
Sure. It also helps for frameworks to be really simple. So the fact that I chose 8 concepts is complicated enough. So from there it gets a lot simpler. So the concepts in order are leadership, finance, operations, growth, product, service, sales, and marketing. Those are the 8 areas of that every single business, 100% of businesses will have. That is the logical and priority order of them. But as you go down the list of concepts, they get more comprehensive. So leadership is the most bare bones one, because it's really about the vision, the mission, the purpose, the niche, and communication and setting a tone for management. On the other end of the spectrum, there's marketing, and marketing is the most comprehensive. marketing is how you take everything that's happening inside of the business, what the product can actually do, what the service is, what you're trying to sell, and communicate it out to the market. So it has to be the most comprehensive. It has to understand the customer, but it can't lie, right? You know what I mean? Because if it lies, then that's going to short circuit once you actually close the sale. The customer is disappointed.
Okay, so the byline in the book really talks about overcoming fear. What's the through line about overcoming fear, and how does that apply within the framework? And I'm also just curious, what lesson took you the longest to learn?
Well, fear is ever present, and one of the just about everything I do that has to do with talking, speaking, writing, all this kind of stuff, podcasting, I'm the number one beneficiary from all of it. I learned the most. I'm the person who got the most out of me writing the book. I'm happy that it helps other people, but ultimately it helped me to get my own narrative straight in my head. And your own narrative was what helps you overcome fear, because fear is always there. You're always going to have some kind of imposter syndrome. It's really what enables you to push through that fear, what enables you to show up a certain way in the face of that fear. And it's really the narrative that you have about yourself, right? So if you have this self-defeating narrative, then that's how you're going to meet the fear. The fear is going to overwhelm you every single time. And so that's kind of why, the book, I hope what's in it teaches people, but maybe even more importantly, and this is kind of meta, that I wrote the book and that I talk so openly about the failures in the book. What I'm really trying to do is model that's totally cool. You know what I mean? And that failure is not fatal, and that the journey of being an entrepreneur is a journey. It's not a company that you sell and you exit and you make money. That's not actually what it is. It's this journey where you're learning and you're developing over time and you're growing and you're adding these capabilities through both the good and the bad experiences. So in terms of what lessons took the longest to learn, probably how important well-being was to everything from a business perspective.
Yep.
So I started this whole journey when I was in my 20s. When you're young, you don't notice things like you do when you get into your late 30s and then your 40s. I'll be 45 in 2 weeks. And over time, I didn't, there's so much in our culture about, we're getting a lot better about this, by the way. We're getting a lot better about this, but there has been historically so much in our culture about, grinding and hustling and giving up sleep. And then there's the stuff that we don't talk about, but, when we're not in a pandemic, was happening all the time, all these conferences and drinking and sort of all these different things. And, I didn't realize how much I was beating myself down, internally, and that would actually impact my performance, So over the last 2 years, I've been, sober. I've been doing therapy, really focusing on high quality of sleep and the quality of my ability to produce has gone up so much. And the thing is so crazy about it, right, is we all know that business is competitive, right? Yeah. And it's competitive like sports are competitive, right? I mean, and in some ways it might even be more competitive because, in sports, you just have the number of teams or people that are in the league. And in business, it's all in, right? Everybody is in an open market. So, if you want to be competitive, you have to prepare, you have to take care of yourself. There's no such thing as an athlete that's serious about competing that doesn't focus on sleep, focus on exercise, focus on, their mental state, focus on their nutrition. If you don't do those things, you're not going to be successful. But in business, somehow we don't make the connection between the competitive nature of what we're doing and the importance of taking care of ourselves. So that's been the biggest thing I've learned over the last 2 years. It's not even in the book really. But the book wouldn't have happened had I not, focused on my well-being.
Well, and so much has changed in the last year. It feels like a very different world that we're living in. Everyone's talking about, the Unvalley conference about remote work.
Yeah.
And how do you think that has, since you wrote the book, what's changed about being a part of a team and kind of having that drive and feeling like you can stand out and find your power?
So this thing has hit me a little bit differently than I think it's hit a lot of people. I was already a year into a very introspective period of my life where I had deprioritized work and prioritized my well-being. And over the course of that year, I really shifted a lot of my work to home. And like I took my Wednesdays almost entirely off, and focused on meditating and Pilates and like all the like all this, like really I'm very grateful that I'm able to do it, but I also needed to do it to kind of like fix some of the damage that I had done from just years and years of just focusing on work, right? So this year when the pandemic hit, it wasn't that hard for me personally to just sort of move everything to my house and just sort of ground even deeper into this practice that I have. The only hard thing has probably been just the back-to-back nature of the Zooms and stuff like that, and not getting a good break.
Yeah.
I think it's different for everybody, right? I mean, I think you have different personalities. You have, introverts, extroverts, some blend of them, and everybody's sort of taking this a different way. I think as long as you can focus on what is important for you mentally to be okay, then and you prioritize that. We all have to give ourselves permission to prioritize that. That's like the thing. You know what I mean? Like we have to understand, if you need to go for a run, then cancel the damn meeting. You know what I mean? And go for the run. I mean, especially entrepreneurs, right? Like if you're an entrepreneur, you have control of your time. Like if you say you don't, you're doing it wrong. You do. You have control of your time. And so use your agency. Use your authority over your time, you know what I mean, and demonstrate through time budgeting that you matter, you know what I mean. Plug it in, like literally plug it in your calendar and put those things in there. So
right on.
Yeah, I wish everybody the best, because this is an unbelievably difficult time for many, many, many people. Every single day I hear something that under normal circumstances would have just been some of the worst news I would have heard all year. And I hear it every single day. So I know everyone else is like dealing with this too. I'm not special. And I've been very blessed and very lucky of the timing of where I was relative to this happening. Had this hit 20 years ago when I was waiting tables, this would have been devastating for me.
Yeah.
And it's just none of that is lost on me. You know what I mean? I'm just.
Well, I'd love to dig into that more. An hour or two ago, we had Arlen Hamilton from Backstage Capital on the main stage. And, we're talking about why access to capital is so important, and, some of the similar ideas that you're sharing. But you also talk about how entrepreneurship is the great equalizer. And I think you're a little bit disruptive, because you're even saying that it's like replacing education as the great equalizer. There's so much happening. But I think what I want to bring it back to you is, what do you really mean by that being an equalizer, and how does that apply to finding talent, or to being talent for those who are here and transitioning into tech, and to building successful companies in, again, outside of Silicon Valley, in communities like Nashville or between the coasts?
Well, I mean, let's start with education. Education has become incredibly inequitable in America. So, I mean, entrepreneurship aside, if we just look at education alone, it's not the great equalizer anymore. It's become completely based on wealth and status, and and that's shameful. And you look at the way that the capital industry, whether we're talking about Goldman or big VC firms, and you look at the degrees. They're all going to be of a certain pedigree from 5 or 10 different schools. You know what I mean? And so, and so just by sheer numbers, forget the amount of money it takes to go to those schools. It's a locked in game. You know what I mean? It's a locked in game. Whereas entrepreneurship is the opposite. It's open access. Somebody like me who has 0 credentials can create credentials through proof of work. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what I've done for 20 years. I mean, I didn't even get a book deal. I just published my own book. You know what I mean? It's open access. I can do what I want, thanks to the internet and thanks to entrepreneurship. So that's what I mean when I say it's the great equalizer, is that, the world has flipped. It used to be that entrepreneurship was not open access. You couldn't, I mean, I'm not saying access to capital is totally equal or any of these other kinds of things, but, your ability to actually get into business used to be limited, and now it's so much more, democratic and so much more equal than education. Education is not equal. And so it's however, actually, I shouldn't say that. College and universities and credentials are not equal. Education is, because the internet has made it that way, right? So you can learn online just about anything you want. You can access Harvard level classes. You can access Harvard classes, actual Harvard.
Yeah, right.
You can't get the credential, and you can't get the network, right? Those things are still closed and very inequitable. So that's really what I'm saying. When I say education, unfortunately, it's not synonymous for college and universities, but you kind of have to use it to drive the point home. That system, that overinflated, very inequitable, hard ROI generating system of colleges and universities is pretty problematic.
Well, are you looking at how talent that is interested in transitioning into tech today, and like you moved from Brooklyn to Nashville and ended up in tech, like how are candidates today standing out? Like, what are the skill sets that you think are really important to drive business success?
Well, it's moving super quick, right? So the thing about the pandemic is it showed us just how ready the internet was for this moment, and the internet was real ready for this moment, right? So, look, it's questionable just how much you need to even know code right now, right? You know what I mean? Because we have all these no code platforms that are incredible, and people are legitimately building businesses on them. And so, I would say, the entrepreneurship has been so powerful in opening up new lanes, and it's the intersection of entrepreneurship and technology. It's those two things together constantly opening up the door for more and more people with lower and lower barriers to be able to play. So it's like, what are the skills that you need? I'm not really sure, because there's so many ways you could get in the game now. There are so many ways you can get in the game now. Do you want to learn marketing? Okay, great. Do you want to learn product development? Okay, great. But even in those things, it's like, do you want to be a copywriter? Do you want to be a video editor? Do you want to be, an analytics, person? I mean, the number of new skills that are available, I'm an entrepreneur, so it's a technology entrepreneur in particular. So it's very easy for me to say, like, the things I'm doing didn't necessarily exist 25 years ago. But my wife, who works in the music industry, her last three jobs have been at Pandora, YouTube, and Spotify. And literally, her jobs in the music industry did not exist before she had them. Literally, like, each position was kind of created for her in her specific skill set and talents. You know what I mean? And so, like, that's the world we're in. It's like, all this stuff is evolving in real time. So even if I said, hey, these are the things that are really going to, next year it would expire, probably the skill is learn how to learn online. That's probably the enduring skill,
Yeah, absolutely. And you're a proof point for exactly how that works. How do you think that, and this is, thinking more about people who are building successful companies, how do they get national media?
Well, there's a little bit of luck involved. Yeah, there's a little bit of luck involved with that, I think. But it's still, when you talk about national media, and I'm assuming you mean like big brand national media, like, New York Times and things of that nature.
You look at the Coast to pay attention to what's happening in Nashville.
This is really interesting, right? It's like, okay, so I'm a healthcare venture capitalist, right? Okay. In terms of like pay attention, what am I really looking for? Because here's what I found. The people who I need to know, they know, right? They know Nashville is, no question, one of the top healthcare clusters in the country. They know. And who do I need to know? Savvy investors who could potentially be limited partners or potential customers or acquirers of my companies. That's who I need to know. The rest of it is like vanity. I don't need that. You know what I mean? So and no, by the way, like, the big brand media stuff doesn't actually create anything of substance. Like, it's funny. I have measurable, experiences for this year, because I published my own book, so I had to do my own marketing. I worked with Scribe Media; they're incredible, but like, at the end of the day, like, it was on me to really like do it, right?
Yeah.
And so they helped me to line up a bunch of different, media hits and stuff. And then I also earned some through the podcast stuff that I did and just people sort of seeing me and inbounding and stuff like that. And so I had everything from podcasts to like YouTube stuff to a spot on CNBC, with Jim Cramer, right? The thing that was the biggest was a YouTube thing that I did for a YouTube channel that before I got booked for it, I hadn't even heard of it. But it had the actual biggest impact on my social growth, on book sales, on CNBC. God bless them. I love it. I love the platform. I hope they invite me back. But like, it actually didn't move the needle.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so like, again, this is just one of those things where it's like, yes, the big brand matters, but like, who does it really serve? Big brands serve the big brands. You know what I mean? For us here, it's like, what are you really after? What are you really after? I would just say that's one of the things I wrote about in the book is like how I got all sideways about this like stupid, technology award that I didn't win one year and then I won it another year or whatever. And I got so upside down about it. The chapter is called "Don't Believe Your Press," because so many people get upside down about press, thinking like press is the measurable. Press is not the measurable. Like, what's your revenue? How profitable are you? How many customers are you signing up? How is your product advancing on the roadmap? Like real stuff that matters. How happy are you really with yourself? You're doing like real stuff. Like don't worry about how big somebody else is or how many publications somebody else is in. It legit doesn't matter. It does not matter.
We have just a few minutes left. I'd love just to hear more about Jumpstart and the 100 companies in your portfolio as you've been able to invest and you're looking to the future. What are you excited about? What's got you revved up?
Look, I'm excited to be in healthcare. I mean, everybody is coming to the party now, and it took me 6 years to really get to get here. I'm still learning, but I've got a very strong understanding of healthcare and where the real market opportunities are. It is the biggest slice of the GDP, 18% and growing, probably be 20% in the next 8 years. Everybody's thinking about it because of COVID-19. Everybody's thinking about it because of lack of access and because, it's tied to employment. And that's crazy because when we have something like this happen, people lose their healthcare and they need it now more than ever. Everybody's thinking about it because we should have had telemedicine way before the pandemic. What was that about? So I'm super excited to be in such a meaningful space that is so ready for change and that the world has really woken up to. And working with just amazing founders on that. So that's really cool. You know what I mean? I used to do, digital marketing stuff, and look, I mean, everybody's got to make a living, but your whole life being about clicks and converting customers. For me, it was just kind of like vapid. So I'm very happy to be working in a space that I feel like actually makes the world a better place.
Okay. There's a lot of places where people can find you and learn more about what you're working on. But thinking more about those who are in this transition period or are working on their career in tech, can we get a sneak peek of what you're working on next that they should check out? Something they should check out?
Oh man, yeah, I actually can't do that, but I'm working on a brand new fund and it'll be a big deal when it launches. I'm pretty excited about it. But I would say what you can do is you can just follow me at Marcus Whitney on whatever platform, you're on, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever. Just hit me up. I'm there. My book is 99 cents on Kindle on Amazon. So, it's a pretty cheap deal considering it took me 5 years to write it. So, I mean, you can get it for $1.
And give you mad props on social when they get it.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, just like, just find me online. I'm pretty easy to find. I'd be happy to, chat with you, online.
So the book is Orchestrate and Create.
As time allows.
The book is Orchestrate and Create. They can find it on Kindle. They can find you at Marcus Whitney. Thank you so much. I think I speak for everyone in the Powder Keg family and audience when I say, thank you so much for sharing a real story about how this happens and for your candor. And I think shining a light on wellness, like there's no more important time for that to be happening. So we all really appreciate, that you would open up your book and share what that's all about with us. I think it's knowledge about creating power, and that's really, really, really valuable for this community. So thank you, Marcus.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
To our